Hi, and welcome to Education Roundtable. My name is Larry Petraccaro, and I have with me my co-host, Johanna Wright. And tonight we have the pleasure of talking to the principal of Columbia High School, Dr. Kalisha Morgan. So, Dr. Morgan, we'd like to get a little bit started, and maybe you can just, for us to understand a little bit more about you and what vision you have, give us an idea of your background and perhaps the reasons that brought you into education in the first place.
I've always wanted to be a teacher. I remember being in high school and telling one of my teachers, or maybe it was my guidance counselor, I wanted to be a teacher. And her response was, no, you don't want to do that. They don't make any money. So I went to college and I majored in accounting for all of a semester. And I called my mom and I said, this is not what I want to do. And she said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to major in education. Okay, do it. So I changed my major. Started working with young children in after-school programs. Actually, my first job was at Seth Boyden.
Oh, wow.
I was, they had the after-school program of South Orange Maplewood before the Y took it over. And I was based at Seth Boyden for about 2 years, and I ran their after-school program. Went to Kane University, majored in elementary education and history. Graduated, got my first job, kindergarten. I was not a kindergarten teacher at all. But my mom said to me, just get in where you can. So at that time, there weren't a lot of jobs as they were now. So I just had to get in. My supervisor, my boss, my principal at the time, she knew that I didn't like kindergarten. I was mainly a third grade and up type of teacher. So she moved me to fifth grade, and that was the best thing that happened to me, was moving to fifth grade. I loved the writing. I loved teaching reading. I loved doing read-alouds. I even went out on the playground and played with them. I just loved my students. One day I was in my classroom teaching, and they were doing walkthroughs, district office in Orange at the time. And they were doing walkthroughs, and the director of curriculum and testing came by, and she was watching me. I was teaching a writing lesson. I remember the lesson. I was animated. I'm in there, and I'm doing, and we're having a good time. And the end of the day, I got a call saying, go see Millie Cook. And I'm like, why am I being called? I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? So I go over there, and she goes, I need you to do what I saw you do and teach other teachers. So the following year, I became the master teacher for language arts in the city of Orange. So my job entailed of me going to different classrooms and training new teachers on how to teach the language arts program. So that was my first role out of the classroom. And I did that for a few years. And then I went to my first paid supervisory job was I ran an alternative high school. And this little old person, and I had an alternative high school in Middlesex County, and I loved it. I just love challenges. No one wants to work with those kids, and no one wants to do that. So I did that for a few years, and then I was recruited back to Orange to take over the school where I started my career. Because the principal was retiring, she called me up, and she goes, I need you to come back. And I said, come back where? I had just had my son, and I said, I'm too young to be a principal. Who wants to be I was 32 years old. I just felt like I was too young to be a principal. And to lead people that were my colleagues at one point, and people who were my mentors, I became their principal. And that was a great experience for me. So for 6 years, I ran Oakwood Avenue School. And then after that, I went to Orange High School. And again, my alma mater, that's my hometown, and was co-principal. We had two people because Orange High School, we were on the focus list, had a low graduation rate. So we just needed two people, one person to do the curriculum stuff and another person basically to do the culture and climate. So we did that, and here I am. I left Orange and decided I wanted to try central office. Came to South Orange Maplewood and was the director of curriculum, director of planning and assessment. I'm sorry, and that entailed basically the job description was analyzing student data, running the testing program, registration, EVVRS, which is now the student safety program, and just basically reporting out data to the district and the board. And then I was asked to come to Columbia High School. So that's how I ended up here.
That's how you ended up here?
Yes.
Was there anything that about Columbia that attracted you?
Well, I always would ride by Columbia, and I knew they were like one of the top high schools in New Jersey. So I was honored to be asked to come here. Like, oh wow, I get to come into a high school with over 2,000 students and actually put my mark on it. So I was excited to be asked to come here.
That's great. You said something. See, there you go, monopolizing things again. But you did say something. Two things that caught my attention. One was you said your original major was elementary education or education in history, and I'm curious as to the reason for the choice of history, and if that has had some impact or information or informed you in any of the things that you do as principal or as a teacher.
I love reading, so that's probably why I chose history. I like to research things, so anything I don't know, I like to look it up. I like to talk to people, get, just find out what may have happened historically before I make a decision. I chose history because I really wanted to go to law school, but then I just love teaching. I'm like, I can be an educational. I was just thinking about where I can go with my degrees, because just because you have an education degree, you're not confined to the classroom, as I'm finding out. I've moved a lot quickly, and you don't have to be confined to the classroom. But I just like reading, and I still do. I read a lot. I like historical books, and especially African American history. I love that. So I just read a lot. So that's why I chose history.
Now, you said that you had co-presidents in Orange, and this is really intriguing to me. You said there was curriculum and a culture and climate principal. Which were you?
Curriculum.
Oh, so you handled the curriculum. So what are your thoughts and impressions about Columbia High School now that you've been in your role for, I guess, maybe 7 months?
7 months or so.
Columbia High School has its positives. I love the students. I think I'm getting into the groove of things now that it's been 7 months. They know me, I know them. I walk around, hey, Dr. Morgan. One student stopped me in the hallway. I got into Morgan today. High five. It was great. Because I've been talking to her about her plan. So it was great that she actually took my advice and applied to some schools. So now she said that if she can just find some money, she'll be going to Morgan. So I thought that was great. I love the students because they're very driven. I mean, these are driven children. I mean, they know where they want to go. The classes that they take they're difficult. The loads that some of these children have. But they, not saying but they understand what life is. They're very socially conscious. I love having conversations with Hannah. I mean, she keeps me informed of what should happen and how students are feeling. And she meets with me once a month. I just love when students come to my office and hang out. They're starting to do that, and I did that in Orange. So again, I'm starting to feel comfortable being here, and they're starting to feel comfortable with me being here.
So what has been the most rewarding part of the job so far?
I think the rewarding part is when we have a plan for a student. We have some students here who may not be the top. And I love working with the administrative team, putting a plan together to help a student. So even if it's, okay, Columbia High School may not be the place for you, but when the student says, I'm struggling here, and we get together and come up with a plan. And it may be Job Corps, it may be VOTEC, it may be other options, but to have a student sit here and just fail is unacceptable. So we've been working together as a team to put action plans in place, working with parents to put 504s in place, working with the child study team to make sure those IEPs are followed. And it's just been a lot of work, but it's been rewarding. I love when I get emails from parents saying, thank you for helping me. Thank you for recognizing that there was an issue. Or just me sitting in on a meeting with a teacher and a parent. And I may not have to be there, but I'm there to support the teacher and to let the parent know that I'm interested in what's going on.
I was curious, because of the type of communities Maplewood and South Orange are, and because of the diversity, obviously, that's in the high school, does that present, in your opinion, maybe a set of challenges that other high schools in the area might not have?
Every high school has problems. We just don't talk about it as much. We had problems in Orange. I'm sure there's problems in Milburn. I'm sure there's problems in Montclair. But here, because we focus a lot on the students who are at the top, I think we need to focus on the students that are in the middle and also the students that are at the bottom. It needs to be equitable. And I did not see that happening a lot. We're trying to move that way. We're letting students know that you walking in the hallway all day is unacceptable and we're not going to put up with it. We're letting students know that you need to come to school on time. Your attendance is now being counted, and if you don't have the amount of seat time that you're supposed to have, you will be coming to credit recovery. If you fail the course, you will go to summer school. So just holding students accountable across the board, whether you're a high flyer, the middle, or even the lowest achieving student.
You mentioned something about credit recovery before.
Yes.
That's something that maybe most of us aren't quite familiar with. Could you give us an idea what that is?
The state has a statute where you're supposed to have a certain amount of days in school. If you miss 10%, there's 180 days. If you miss 10% of a class, then you're supposed to not, you're supposed to have your credit withheld. So, and that's been happening at Columbia. However, students were not informed that they were either having these NCs, no credit, as what they call it, and they were told maybe at the last minute, attendance wasn't tracked appropriately. So what we've been doing is every marking cycle, letters go home to parents. Your child has exceeded these number of absences, and we will send, and we started doing attendance appeals. So every Friday, my team and I, myself, my 4 vice principals, my director of guidance, and the athletic director, because that makes up the Columbia High School administrative team, we come together and we look at these appeals. Now, most of them, they have doctor's notes. I have a student who's a fencer, and she goes to these competitions, but she maintains her grades. Those students I'm not concerned about. I am concerned about the student who cuts class every day, but yet they're passing the class. So my question is, how are they cutting this class and passing the class with like a B, but you're supposed to have this amount of seat time? And if you don't have the documentation to prove where you were, whether you're ill, whether you're competing in something educational, then you must make up that time. And that's where credit recovery comes in. You are recovering the credit that you lost because you were absent.
But if you're doing well, like the fencer, for example, or some of the other students that you mentioned, the appeal process or whatever you sit in on can make a I guess exception or can recognize.
Right, because what you don't want to happen, for any reason you can be audited. And you don't want the state to come in and say, hey, we know, because we report all this data in NJ Smart. So the state knows who's here and who's not. So let's just say they may say one day, this student had 50 absences. How did she pass? We must have something on file to say, this is why she passed. She had a death in the family, an extended illness, anything that's justified per the South Orange Maplewood policy. We have a policy that speaks to absences, and we must follow that policy.
So when the audit, we called in an independent auditor to audit credit recovery in this district, and what was found here that we were doing was that the kids weren't receiving credit. Was that it?
They were receiving the credit, but they weren't doing the work. So now we are holding them accountable, because even the students was like, the students are saying, oh my God, we have to do the work. Yes. You must do the work.
Wow, what a surprise.
Right.
Surprise, surprise.
So
I got another surprise. We're going to have to take a break.
Okay.
We're going to take a break for about a minute. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Morgan, so stay with us.
It's an onion.
Hi, and welcome back to Education Roundtable. This is Larry Petraccaro, my co-host Johanna Wright, and we've been talking with Dr. Kalisha Morgan. Dr. Kalisha Morgan is the principal here at Columbia High School, and we're going to start the second half of the show I want to start a question that goes back to something that you said when we were talking before, when you were talking a little bit about your background. You had indicated that your first opportunity to teach was in kindergarten, and somehow that didn't quite mesh with your interests or for whatever reason, and then you found your niche in like fifth grade.
Fifth grade.
So somewhere between kindergarten and fifth grade. So what is it that that a teacher has? I mean, some teachers will probably love kindergarten, some teachers love high schools. So maybe you could expand on that a little bit.
Well, when I interview teachers, I always tell them to teach what you're most comfortable with. Just don't take a job because you need a job, because it's going to show. And I think my principal, my supervisor at the time, she saw it. I was just not there with the babies. And maybe because I was young. I was 22 years old. I didn't have any children. I'm the youngest person in my family, so I was not used to working with babies. Tie my shoe, help me go to the bathroom.
He looked at me.
Yeah, right. He touching me and, teaching the letters. I wanted you to come in already knowing how to read. Everyone must teach to their strengths, and that was just not my strength. So I was just blessed that she recognized it, and she said, "I'm going to move you to fifth grade," and that was just a great decision on her part. And even with myself as a principal, I always look for the good in teachers and try to put them where I think they will perform the best.
And that's where the instructional principal comes in as the instructional leader. In terms of professional development and things of that nature. Where are we here with professional development for staff? I know in the past it's been an issue and a problem, but for you to be able to get into the classroom to assist teachers, especially the new teachers that we have. We have an overwhelming amount of young people that need a lot of attention.
Well, one thing that I put in place this year was meeting with the supervisors once a month. They are really appreciative of these meetings where we come together and talk about what's actually happening in the classrooms. We look at data from our observations. We look at where we can support teachers, where we strong, where we weak, what can we do as a building. This past Tuesday, I lead the data team for Columbia High School, so this past Tuesday I had a data team meeting. And that's when I knew I just loved being here, because I was really in my element on Tuesday. I was excited. We looked at student achievement data. We looked at what students were failing, why they were failing, what can we do to help. We looked at observation data, where teachers scoring 2s, which is partially ineffective, and where teachers scoring the highest. Where are strong areas? So when we finished with the data team meeting, I asked the people who are on the team to let's make a wish list. Taking all this data that we have, what will the ideal Columbia High School look like to you? So that was the charge I gave them for next month's meeting, based on data. And that's when you hear about data-driven instruction and data-driven decisions. That's what they mean. Just don't put things in place just because it sounds good. You must put things in place because you know we need it in order to move the needle for children.
Wow. So what's been your most challenging aspect of your job so far? It seems that I'll be totally overwhelmed right now. What has been the most challenging for you coming from central office here in the district? I don't think that many people knew that you were a part of the senior leadership team in central office before coming here. And I have to say, we have a rare commodity in having an elementary school principal as well as a high school principal. Here it's totally unusual for an administrator to have those kinds of experiences.
Many people don't have that experience where you started from elementary and you see the growth. And you know where kids need to be. I think I love high school because I know what the challenges are for students to get into college, not only get into college, but stay in college and graduate. So we must make sure that we are not coddling our children. We're doing everything for them, because they're going to go out into the real world. And they're going to come back and say, oh, I couldn't do it, or, I flunked out because no one told me to go to class. So we have to start training them now, particularly at the freshman level. I have a freshman myself at home, and I backed off totally. He did well his first and second marking period. I backed off because I wanted to see if he can do it by himself. And he did. Third marking period grades just came out today, and he made first honors again. So he did it on his own while playing the sport, while participating in his other activities. And that's what we need to try to do for our children. Not that we don't love them, but they must go out and do their best
Figure it out.
on their own. Figure it out.
I'm glad to hear you say something like that because I think too often we can think that the job of the high school is only to get the kids into college, but what you're saying is it's to get them out of college.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree with
And
that.
into the
I
workforce.
agree
Right.
completely. I agree completely.
Yes.
Retention.
Right.
Yes.
Retention is key. Right.
With the fact that you've been a teacher as well as an administrator and a principal, is there any concern that, so might somebody be concerned that your familiarity with teaching might make you less effective in terms of managing that?
Well, I received a compliment the other day from Scott White, and he said, it's rare where you can find someone who has the instructional knowledge and also can manage, and you can do both. And I don't know where I picked up that skill. I've had great mentors in my life.
That's where you got it.
Right, and I watched how people can manage what's going on in the building, but also have a pulse on what's going on in that classroom. And you must do both. And it's talking through my vice principals, letting them know, even though people they think vice principals' only job is to discipline, but I have my vice principals going in and they're doing observations, they're doing walkthroughs, they're going in to see what's happening in those classrooms. It's not just suspension and detentions and dealing with discipline. We have discipline issues, but we try our best to try to get in at least 3 classrooms a day. It doesn't happen a lot. Now that we're in the thick of things, in September it was easy because kids are new and they're doing everything they're supposed to do. But normally around January they start to slack off a little bit, and that's normal. That's normal. But we talk about what's happening, and we talk about what's happening in the classroom. Those are the best conversations. I love when my vice principals come in at the end of the day, and my secretary redid my office, so it's a couch, and it's more welcoming. And they come in and we just talk about kids. We talk about kids that may have an issue at home. We talk about kids who are on their way to Morehouse. We talk about kids who are struggling to take the SAT. The young lady told me today, senioritis is a real thing. I said, it's not a real thing, but she was just telling me that she's struggling as a senior. So those are the kids that we are talking about daily. And those are that's what makes me excited.
Well, I know that when you were in Orange, you made sure that you put in some AP programs. And my understanding that they had like one AP program, and they went from one AP program with you becoming the principal to a myriad of AP programs and supports in place.
Right.
They've made the national AP honor roll for the last few years. Yeah, 2 times.
2 times.
Which is really exciting.
Right.
How did that come about?
Well, again, it's all about expectations. I'm an Orange High School graduate, and I just knew they can do better. So again, working together as a team, we started putting AP courses in place. I remember a couple years when it was just taking off, I myself and my vice principals, we would go through student transcripts because students weren't signing up for them. Here they're running to them. In Orange, they shied away from them. So what I did was, if you were in honors and you had an A average, I just moved you. I just moved you. Parents were upset, because they didn't understand what AP can do for you. I was one of the first classes to take an AP course at Orange High School back in 1989, and I did the same thing. They took the top 10 students, and I don't know how I got in there, but I was in there. And they took the top 10 students and put them in AP English. And like I said, I always like to read and write. And I go home and tell my mom, I said, I don't want to do this, because I was away from my friends. And my mother, not knowing, because she wasn't a college graduate, she came in and tried to withdraw me from the class because that's what I wanted her to do. Well, I had a wonderful guidance counselor, Miss Jones. Miss Jones shut the door, and she became my mother. And she told me I was not dropping that class, and I better get my little self up there and do it. So it was like, okay. So I ended up staying in the class, and it helped me when I got to college, because out of everyone on my floor in my dorm, I was the only one that went right into English 101. I didn't have to take developmental English because I was prepared from high school.
Right.
So when I became principal of Orange, I did the same thing. I just started putting kids in classes, and they fought me. I mean, they went to the superintendent. They even called the county superintendent. And Mr. Lee, my former superintendent, what are you doing? I said, I got this. Just let me do this. And that's one thing I liked about Mr. Lee. He just let me run the building. He never got involved. And then 2 years after that, we made AP Honor Roll. We had AP Calculus, where we brought kids in over the summer to help them prepare. And we had an 80% passing rate on AP Calculus in an urban school.
Expectations.
Expectations.
Yeah, I think that is important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't have a lot of time left, but you mentioned you had like 4 vice principals.
Yes.
How are you, or how is your leadership team organized, and how's the high school organized to some extent?
Well, we have 4 vice principals, 1 for each grade.
One for each grade, okay.
So, yes. So if a freshman has a problem, then we expect that freshman vice principal to handle it. And they also follow the kids. So you would be with them for 4 years. If the principal was here, you will see those kids for 4 years. Excuse me. Mr. Willard is our senior vice principal right now. We've been hosting our incoming freshmen for next year this week from SOMS and MMS. So he's been the principal introducing, introducing himself to them, saying, I will be your vice principal next year. So they already know what he looks like. I introduced myself to them. You know, I'm your principal. We'll see you in August. And they were happy to see us.
Well, will we see you in August and
I
September?
knew you were going to go there. I was trying not to say that. You know, I don't know, but I believe that the work that has started needs to continue. The challenges of the job, you asked about the challenges, it was September. It was that first initial reaction with people not knowing who I was and me not knowing who they were. And it was hard. It was hard listening to, the parents that may or may not want me to be here. It was hard listening to the staff because they were just tired of another principal, and I understand that. And maybe around January, I started to really get myself out there, because I was holding back too. Because I'm like, if you don't want me here, I don't want to be here. It was kind of going back and forth. Now teachers are saying, are you staying? Now they understand why I did what I did, why I need you to take attendance every day, why I need you to talk to parents when a student is failing. Parents shouldn't have to reach out to us. We should be reaching out to that parent. So, I'm just holding them accountable, updating that grade book every 2 weeks. There's no reason why a parent should know their child is failing at the end of the marking cycle. Unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And they probably thought that I was being hard, but as a parent, that's what I would want. So I don't think I was asking them to do anything I wouldn't expect for somebody to do for my own kid.
Well, accountability certainly makes a lot of sense. And to your point earlier, accountability is what these students are all going to be tasked with at some point.
That's right.
I think one of the things I've come away with, and we're just about out of time, that I think is really important is the understanding that high school isn't the end of the situation.
Right.
High school isn't the end of it.
Commencement
It's just
means
the beginning of it, and it's getting through the next step.
And we need continuity, so we need you to stay. We need the continuance of Dr. Morgan.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're going to have to not stay right now. So
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on Education Roundtable. Thank you, Dr. Morgan.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having
Johanna,
me.
for joining us. Thank you.